I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. New York Governor Kathy Hochul has allocated tens of millions of dollars in new abortion funding. This comes as Hochul was, quote, horrified over a leaked Supreme Court draft decision that signaled a possible overturning of Roe v. Wade. Hochul is a pro-choice Democrat running for a full term as governor of New York and pledged to defend the right to have an abortion with the full weight of her office on Tuesday. Hochul said abortion service providers would receive $25 million in additional funding, as well as $10 million in security funds. Let's take a listen to Governor Hochul.
You and all the volunteers and the workers at NIRH for just never giving up the fight. You have been sounding the alarm literally for years, and people never dreamed that this day would come, but thank God we've had you on the front lines. And so I look forward to continuing strengthening our partnership even going forward. And I also want to acknowledge some of the other participants here today to address this urgent issue. And that is the co-chairs of the Legislative Pro-Choice Caucus, our great friend, Senator Liz Krueger, as well as Assemblymember Reyes. And I want to thank them for being on the forefront of this battle as well as Michelle Casey, someone I've known a long time, who's the CEO of Planned Parenthood of Central and Western New York, as well as I want to thank Attorney General Tish James and our legislative sponsors of other ideas that are so important as we work together to ensure that we have the rights enshrined here in our state, but also provide access to abortion. Like millions of Americans, I was horrified by that draft Supreme Court decision that came out last week. Just absolutely unconscionable to fathom what the majority of the Supreme Court is willing to do to something we have taken for granted and relied upon for half a century. And for the sake of women across this country, I hope that is not the final decision, but I'm going to have to pursue down the assumption that it is going to be. But we will also reestablish here in the state of New York that access to reproductive health care is a human right. And we will defend that right to have an abortion with the full power of New York State government, and will ensure that every single person in need of care receives that care. And we'll never stop fighting to make sure that New York and women from all over who are seeking safe, accessible abortion service receive them. But to truly ensure that anyone seeking abortion in New York has access to that, we have to ensure that the providers have the resources and the capacity to accommodate all patients who walk through their doors. It's simple. If we're going to guarantee the right to an abortion, you have to guarantee access to an abortion. And I've said last week, we're not just playing defense, we're playing offense. And that's why we're taking immediate action starting today to deliver $35 million in unprecedented funding to urgently support abortion providers to provide this access and this vital care. The Abortion Services Provider Fund will get immediate help, resources for their clinics, while safeguarding access. And this is a nation-leading response. There's been a lot of talk about doing something, but here in New York, those who know us, we don't just talk, we take action. So today, I'm directing the Department of Health to create New York's first fund ever to support abortion providers. $25 million will expand capacity and access for patients seeking abortion care, largest fund of its kind in our nation. One other state has a similar fund, but nowhere near the scale. We're the first large state to launch this direct support for abortion providers here in the state of New York. But in addition to this direct support to the providers to make sure that they can be prepared for what will be an influx of patients, we also have to make sure that these facilities are safe, that the workers who go there, the clinical staff, the healthcare providers, the doctors, as well as the patients, know that they are safe when they walk down the street and enter the doors, because we are in a very different time right now. So we are announcing $10 million in security grants for reproductive health care centers. And no one should feel unsafe accessing health care, abortion care, and no one should feel unsafe providing that health care as well. So we have to be proactive. We have to get these security measures in place now. And we have seen the threats and actually the action of anti-abortion violence, and the climate is getting more extreme every single day. So it's only going to get worse as this decision is rendered in the next few weeks, and we need to be ready, and we will be ready here in the state of New York. In the meantime, we'll continue to explore every option available in the short term and the long term, working with our providers, our legislators, and our advocates on many different proposals. Today is about taking action. However, we'll take it action, not just talk about it in the future, but take it right now. So there's an urgent need to provide this access. I'm really proud that New York will lead the nation, hopefully set an example for the other states to realize that all of us have a responsibility to welcome with open arms those who need these services, as well as make sure New Yorkers, New York women have complete access without wait times, that they don't have their services disrupted either. We've been fighting this battle for far too long, my friends. This was a battle my mother had to fight in her 30s. It's a battle I had to fight when I was in my 30s. Now my daughter Katie in her 30s. This is a fight that her generation is dealing with as well. But I sure as heck want to make sure that we don't have this battle still lingering when my brand new granddaughter Sophia is in her 30s. So we are laying down the marker today. We are saying that we refuse to go backwards. We have fought too long and hard for this access and for these rights. And New York has always led the way when it comes to enshrining these kind of rights. When you think about the women, it's the courageous women at Seneca Falls, all those who demanded autonomy over their bodies and the right to not be held as property of a husband. We like to think we've come a long way, but I feel we're going backwards and not forward in this country. That is why we are called upon as New York women. New York women have to continue to lead this fight with our male allies and throw down the gauntlet and say, no more, we're not going backwards. We know that here in the state of New York, we had access to abortion rights 3 years before Roe v. Wade. And we saw a huge influx of people come here at that time. Now we have to be ready. And I'll tell you, this is deeply personal. As the first female governor of the state of New York, this is a fight I am willing to take on. We'll roll up our sleeves and let people know where our values are. We're not backing down and will not stand idly by when rights of women across the entire nation are destroyed. So I am proud that we are able to be continuing these battles. In 2019, we took the major step of ensuring that our state law has codified the rights within Roe v. Wade. I was proud to preside over the Senate at that time. It was a huge, huge point of pride for all of us in 2019. And earlier this past month, we made sure that our budget reflected those same values and said that insurance companies must cover abortion services as well. So we're going to keep examining our regulations, make sure that our laws are being enforced. We also are calling on social media companies to fight misinformation. We did that last fall when I stood with Senator Gillibrand in Central Park, saying that these platforms have to make sure that the lies stop. We see how lies like the big lie can perpetrate and be penetrated through society. We have to stop the lies about abortion access and what that's all about. And we're calling on the federal government at a time when we have Democrats in charge to not just codify Roe v. Wade themselves nationally, but also repeal the Hyde Amendment so support can go to women all across this nation to receive something that we consider a basic human right. So today is not our first countermeasure in the fight being waged against denying abortion access. We'll keep playing offense. It's where I'm most comfortable on the playing field, being aggressive on these issues, and we'll do whatever it takes to defend the rights of not just New York women, but women all across this nation. New York will be there. We'll be there for them, provide essential health care. And so we finally say, don't mess with the state of New York. We're putting in the resources in place to make sure our providers and our patients have whatever they need to exercise those very basic human rights. So thank you very much. And I appreciate everyone who's joining this battle, and we are ready.
Thank you, Governor, for your leadership in our critical time in our state's and our nation's history. At this time, I'd like to introduce to you Senator Liz Krueger. She has served in the New York State Senate for 20 years and chairs the Senate Finance Committee. Senator Krueger.
Thank you very much. I'm so proud to be here with all the women on this press conference, and I couldn't be prouder of our Governor Kathy Hochul. We're doing exactly what many of us knew that she would do. She would immediately come out, stand up for women, stand up to protect abortion rights in our state, and realize that because of the insanity happening at the Supreme Court and in at least 26 other states in the country, that New York was going to need to stand up to help abortion refugees who would seek out healthcare services across state lines coming to New York for assistance. And it is very meaningful that she is committing $35 million to our providers so they can expand access and keep themselves and their patients safe. And I'm sorry, Governor, it's probably a down payment on other monies we're going to need to help to come up with to make sure that the people coming across state lines who will disproportionately be low income, young, and young women of color are able to come here and get the services they need. But what a tremendous, tremendous start for us all. And again, just to remind everyone, what I think people in New York know, the polling data shows 70 to 80% of Americans support legal abortion and believe that those decisions should be between women and their healthcare providers. Government has no business in this business. And that the fact is, nobody wanted to see this case overturned in court and throwing literally our entire country into potential chaos, as we are seeing state by state, city by city. And yes, you're absolutely right, Governor Hochul. The great state of New York needs to stand up and lead on this issue. And I'm very proud of my role with the pro-choice legislative caucus that we've moved important legislation in our state over the years. And we are ready to move more legislation, perhaps within the next week, to strengthen our laws to make sure that New York is there for all women who need our assistance and to protect their right to have abortions without anyone getting in the way. So again, I so appreciate you're not needing an education on this. You're not needing to think this through. You're just knowing what the right answers are and standing up with us from day one to make sure New York is our leader in the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. At this time, I would like to introduce to you an Assembly member and also a registered nurse of oncology at Montefiore Einstein Hospital, Karines Reyes.
Thank you, Governor. And I want to thank all the women that are here today to talk about this very important issue. I'm here, I consider myself representing the 60 plus members of the Assembly that are part of our bipartisan pro-choice legislative caucus, who are standing behind the governor during this time, very proud of her steadfast position on supporting the rights of New York women and women across the country to bodily autonomy. The reality is that it is a very, very scary time for us. And we are happy to call ourselves New Yorkers, and we applaud the governor for this investment, which, as Senator Krueger said, is only a down payment to the much needed resources we're going to need. We needed them before, but even more so now, as the climate in the country continues to shift. I think it's important that New York stand up as a leader and continue to affirm the rights of women to choose, continue to affirm that abortion care is absolutely health care that should be afforded to all women across the state and across the country. And in New York, we're going to put our money where our mouth are, and we're going to make that investment. We thank you, Governor, today for that commitment, and we're going to continue to work with you to bring more resources to make sure that all women have these resources at their fingertips. Thank you.
Thank you, Assembly Member. At this time, I would like to introduce Michelle Casey. She is the CEO of Planned Parenthood of Central and Western New York. Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning, and thank you for having me this morning. As you all know, the Supreme Court is poised to vote women and all people who can get pregnant out of the Constitution. They'll make us a fraction of a citizen. We are not truly free. The Supreme Court is telling us that the state is in control of our bodies and choices if we are pregnant, and that we alone have to deal with all things that come during and after. That is not democracy. And this is a moment when I'm grateful to live in New York State for sure. This is the first time there's been a ruling out of the Supreme Court that retracts rights, and they are doing it on the backs of those with the most barriers and least resources. Banning abortion doesn't reduce abortions, it just makes them less safe and puts a greater demand on those facing the most barriers. Nearly 1 in 4 women in America will have an abortion by age 45. it is common and essential care. However, getting access to this care shouldn't depend on the color of your skin, your age, your zip code, or how much money you make. And right now it does. At Planned Parenthood of Central and Western New York, we are providers of healthcare, and we are doing all we can to increase access for those in the community and in our communities and beyond. The abortion care providers and network in New York State is going to need significant funding from New York State to rise to this challenge. We are expanding clinics in Buffalo and Rochester to increase the number of people we can serve. We are recruiting staff to ensure we have people to see the extra patients we're going to need to care for. We're also going to be bringing on patient care navigators to help people find their way to services. We will do all we can to help people for as long as they need it. I think this is going to be a really long haul. We're in a fight to make sure everyone has the power to control their own bodies, lives, and future. We believe your body is your own. You and only you should control your personal medical decisions. No politicians, no bans, and no court ruling should ever interfere in your ability to access abortion care. As a trusted provider of abortion care, we want to ensure high quality and timely care is available to all that seek it. This funding will help make that mission a reality. We really thank the governor for moving forward so quickly to get resources out to providers to help us ramp up to meet the demand as quickly as possible, and look forward to additional resources for the abortion care ecosystem. Every day counts at this point in time, and I'm really grateful to live in New York and have Governor Kathy Hochul putting this funding out to really help us meet the challenge that is at hand. Thank you.
I want to thank everyone for participating today to continue sounding the message loud and clear that we will take on this fight. It's one we wish we did not have to deal with. We have so many other issues affecting our families, and parents trying to get back to work, and moms trying to manage childcare, and the cost of living going up. And so this should not have to even be on the radar screen. No one should have to worry about this. But unfortunately, as we see, elections have consequences. And the election of Donald Trump could draw a direct line from that to the appointment of 3 Supreme Court justices who are hostile to women's rights, despite what they said during their confirmation hearings, and lesson learned by everyone. And that's why we're in this battle right now. And the state of New York will embrace the opportunity to continue to lead in this space, as we always have, and let people know that this is an area that's critically important to all of us as women, as human beings, and fellow Americans. So we'll be there to provide the support and the resources. And I want to thank all my partners on this call as we begin our journey forward to try and undo and mitigate what could be devastating impacts on the lives of women, particularly women of color, people from communities where they don't have resources, where this is an option for them to just reclaim their lives. We have to fight back on their behalf. So I want to thank everyone very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, everyone. Governor, we're going to be compiling a list of questions that will be following. Everyone, please stand by. Thank you. Good morning, Governor. Your first question this morning comes from John Campbell of the Gothamist. John, your mic is open.
Hi, Governor. Could you walk us through the nuts and bolts here? These grants will go directly to abortion providers. What exactly will they pay for? And also, where is this money coming from?
Thank you for the question, John. This funding comes from the Commissioner of Health's Emergency Fund. So the money is in place. It will not have to be reallocated through the budget. We have that in hand. And we've decided to dedicate $25 million of this directly to providers, 2 forms of mechanism. One will be direct grants, as well as also reimbursements. And so we're working with them. We'll be getting the criteria out very shortly. We want to have all this in place by the time the Supreme Court decision is rendered. So we're starting that up right now, letting people know that, to the extent, as you heard from Michelle Casey in Western New York, they have a lot of people already coming in from places like Ohio. They anticipate a higher influx of individuals coming from out of state. And so they're literally going to be expanding services, putting in new facilities, and hiring more people. And that's the other issue we have to work on, is making sure there's enough people, as we invested $10 billion in our budget to ramp up our healthcare resources. Part of that was to increase the number of nurses and doctors And in the state of New York, nurse practitioners can provide abortion. So we're going to also be focused on the staffing side as well. So there'll be information's coming out shortly. Partial will be reimbursements for expenses. The other part will be for direct grants, as well as applying for security grants to make sure that there are cameras, and if people need to hire individuals to protect facilities. I've visited many Planned Parenthood facilities after there have been attacks, and there's a lot of anxiety, and we don't know what's going to happen, but we need to be prepared for any scenario.
Thank you, Governor. Your next question this morning comes from Grace Ashford of the New York Times. Grace, your mic is open.
Good morning, Governor. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Grace.
Good to see you. Some have worried that the overturning of Roe is just sort of the first step in a broader kind of unraveling of rights that currently are only protected by Supreme Court decisions. People have talked about Obergefell v. Hodges, Loving Virginia. Senator Krueger sponsored an amendment that would enshrine protections for people, a comprehensive amendment based on gender, sexual orientation, disability, et cetera, in the state constitution. I know that you said that you support putting abortion protections in the Constitution, but do you support that broader amendment?
Yes, I do. And that's something we're looking at right now. There are still a number of versions out there. This is something we actually looked at a number of years ago. And I supported this as Lieutenant Governor to say that, yes, at the time we felt more secure that these rights would not be stripped away by the Supreme Court. But you had to be ready for anything, especially after the 2016 election. And we're seeing the results of that. So, yes, I do support this. I'm working closely with our legislative team to engage with the legislators to see what we can do before the end of session, which is literally just a few days away. I do support this.
Thank you, Governor. Your next question this morning comes from Mike Gormley of Newsday. Mike, your mic is open.
Hello, Governor. Good to see you feeling well. Hope things are going well for you in health-wise.
Yes, they are. Thanks, Mike.
The critics might say that you're actually doing spending right now on something that's basically a draft that some Republicans are saying won't happen. Will this money be committed no matter what, and does it continue beyond the 35 million? Is there going to be continued spending?
Right now, we took money in an emergency situation, emergency urgent need we believe is going to be real. I don't know that, I don't want to find out that we waited too long. That's why we're being proactive. I said I'm better at playing offense than defense in anything I do. So we're preparing for this. It's going to take a little bit of time for the criteria to get out there, the information for the applications to come in online. So we're anticipating to have this go live as soon as that Supreme Court decision comes down. But these are also providers who have needed help. There are some cases around the state where there's a shortage of staffing, especially in our rural areas. So we can be looking at this also as just making sure that even if the decision, we pray it does, but not optimistic that they take a different position and leave these rights that we've relied upon for 50 years alone. But if they don't, then New York State has to be ready. So, regardless of what the Republicans say, the money is there for emergency purposes. I consider this an emergency. And I'm going to make sure that that money is available the second that the decision comes down.
Thank you, Governor. We have time for just one more question this morning. This comes from Marsha Kramer at CBS TV in New York City. Marsha, your mic is open.
Morning, Governor. It's good to see you looking so well. You just said moments ago that elections have consequences, but doesn't it also mean that this election that you're facing for governor also has consequences, and that it's important for women to elect somebody who won't try to roll back what New York already has in terms of abortion rights?
Well, absolutely. And every person will make their own decision when they head into the polling place. But yes, no one has fought harder over the course of an entire lifetime to protect these rights. I ran for office in a conservative town in Western New York, and we were told that when you ran for office, if you didn't take the right to life line on the ballot, you had no chance of winning. So that's the environment I came from. And I still went without that line, and I was successful. And even my race in Congress, the fight I had for reproductive health and the Affordable Care Act and even contraception, had an impact on my election. But I'll take those hits any day, because my job as a leader is to stand up for those rights regardless of consequences. But women are taking note that no one has fought longer and harder for reproductive rights in the state of New York than I have, as the only woman candidate, but also someone who truly believes in this. And this is part of who I am. So that is, I believe, something that will be a calculation when people go in there. And certainly they're not going to be very excited about someone who's already said, a candidate, a Republican candidate, who already said that he would pick a pro-life health commissioner. Now, the funding that we're securing for this emergency purpose comes from the health commissioner's emergency fund. I have a health commissioner, Dr. Mary Bassett, who is aligned with me and aligned with the rights of women and protecting them. Can you imagine a scenario where we have a different person in this office who has very different values that are at odds with the majority of what women in the state of New York want? So yes, elections have consequences at the federal level, and they certainly have them at the state level, as we have seen all across this nation what Republican governors are doing, even talking about eliminating the right to have contraception. So one just only need to take a quick look around what Republicans have done when they're in charge, and how Democrats like myself are saying, no more. We're going to stand with the women of our state, and don't mess with us.